episode 243 of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I'm father of Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world. Happy New Year to all. And we are coming off of a hashtag team preseason week. Yes, that's right. It was, as expected, the greatest slate of the year. Traquan the GOAT got a TD. Robert Foster, Australian for sex, got a TD. Dwayne Washington went over 100 yards. Jake Kumaro was very much in play. Zach Zenner went for 123 yards and a touchdown. The God himself, Chris Godwin, was the layup play of the slate. The list goes on. And I think you could kind of feel the edge if you worked hard, if you paid really close attention all year. You could feel the edge in week 17, more so than other weeks. We had people playing Christian McCaffrey. We had Chris Carson massively owned, and I know it worked out, but Chris Carson was massively owned, even though the Seahawks had no motivation or reason to ride him really hard. Once Davante Adams was ruled out, I got really worried about the Packers' motivation and offensive ability here. I mean, Davante Adams is really like their only player, but Jamal Williams was still 23% owned, even though Davante Adams was ruled out. Obviously, the George Kittle narrative paid off, set up so perfectly with the 49ers getting blown out. They were able to pepper George Kittle late. If you've been following the arc of Chris Godwin for the last 2 years, followed closely the quotes around Jameis Winston leading up to that game on Sunday, you kind of saw his game coming, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, like when I call it an information slate, I mean just that. We can gain a bigger edge than usual simply by having a deeper understanding of team situations, of player situations. And that understanding has kind of been accumulating, I think, since August. Because I felt so good about this slate, because I felt like this slate was my calling, I decided to actually play GPPs on DK for really the first time all season. I put 9 entries in the Wildcat. Had some reasonable sweats. I had 1 Josh Allen team, 2 Matt Ryan teams, 1 Jameis Winston team. Had Godwin on, I think, 6 of the 9 teams, was able to profit small on those 9 entries. But given my player pool and what I liked and what I wanted to fade, I feel like I really should have done better. My highest finish was only 136th place. And it just made it even clearer to me. Like, one thing I'm definitely going to concentrate on going forward is roster construction for GPPs, not actually picking players. I think I'm okay at that. But my roster constructions are so bad, like so far from optimal. So it's easy to say, oh, hey, Adam, what's your New Year's resolution? It's to get better at GPPs. Well, obviously, right? Like, I've been saying that for 4 years and I never do it. But now I think I have a clearer picture of what I want to do. I want to hand make, not optimize, not MME. I want to hand make around 10 to 20 GPP lineups per week and put them into mid-stakes tournaments that I think are good, somewhere between like $100 buy-in and $400 buy-in, and really concentrate on making them the kind of rosters that win, not just throwing guys together randomly that I like. So I feel good about that. Wish I kind of felt that way earlier in the season and had been taking shots in some of the tournaments, the mid-stakes tournaments earlier, but I don't know, I probably would have gotten tilted from it anyways and felt like it was distracting me from my cash game lineup and bailed on it anyways. So maybe it's for the best. Let's move to the 4-man and shout out to me. Closed out the championship in convincing style. I think the biggest margin in 4-man history, beating second place Peter by 64 points. I was beyond shocked that I was the only one to play Chris Godwin in that 4-man. I get that people pivoted to MVS, Valdez-Scantling, when Devontae got scratched, but I mean, not playing Godwin here just seemed insane to me. And I understand I'm biased. I love Chris Godwin, went to Penn State and everything. And I get that he had struggled a bit lately, but man, that spot was just so good. And 4,300 is absurd. Chris Godwin was going to play every snap with a pass-heavy quarterback, with a vertically minded quarterback in good weather in December, which we don't always get. Such a talented guy against Atlanta at 4,300. I mean, seems crazy. And then also the other key for me was the Chiefs D. I don't like a lot of what goes into defensive picks for me is just simply like when I think teams are going to play well, when I think it's a really good spot for a team. We used the Chiefs in the Super Contest, which I'll talk about later, and we never lay 13 and a half or 14. I think it was 13 and a half in the Super Contest, but this spot was so absurd. Like the Raiders on a short week coming off their Super Bowl, probably the last game ever in Oakland where they beat their rival Broncos. Like there was just no way they were showing up for that game against a Kansas City team, which really needed it. So you could project so many known passing situations for Derek Carr, so many dropbacks. And when the Chiefs defense gets going in Arrowhead, and they typically do not allow a lot of points in Arrowhead, and they really rush the passer well in Arrowhead, better than people think. So yeah, I thought Chiefs D was just the best defense. Glad that my roster construction landed me there though, because if I had more money or less money, I probably would have played, I don't know, Packers or Giants or Texans. I was just fortunate to land in that 2,600-2,700 range where I was always playing the Chiefs. I did have a big decision with my team at 4 p.m. once Spencer Ware was ruled out. Could have gone from CJ Anderson to Damian Williams and down from Kelsey to George Kittle. And I thought about it hard. I actually did make that change in, universal change across all my lineups at like 4 o'clock. And then at like 2 minutes before lock, I decided against it and I switched it back to Anderson and Kelsey. I just thought I was in such good shape after the 1 p.m. games and so many more people would have Kelsey than Kittle. So I might as well just keep Kelsey in and go for the block. I also really like the touchdown expectation for CJ Anderson. Such little talent on San Francisco going down there. No Pettis, no Goodwin, no Breida. Just set up really well for CJ Anderson to get a lot of volume and red zone work. In second place in the 4-man was Peter. He went Robert Woods and passed on Saquon, so he was dead there. On Saquon, I understand the risk. Maybe they don't want to put him out there for 30 touches in week 17. Wayne Gallman, you could make a case, was playing more, but Wayne Gallman only played like 8 or 10 snaps in week 16. And let's be honest, the Giants have been dead for weeks. Why would they change Saquon's role now? So on a slate where I didn't feel great about like locking in 20 points with anyone or locking in even 15 to 20 with anyone in the expensive range, I thought Barkley was kind of a must. And some people felt the same way about DeAndre Hopkins, and they turned out to be right. I just didn't want to use wide receivers against the Jags. But you can see, if you're on team defense, doesn't matter. You can see how it doesn't really matter with DeAndre Hopkins. Although if you go back through his games, like when he plays the Jags, he typically does not have ceiling games. I think this was his first one. Anyways, Al in third place. He played Jamal Williams and Woods, no Godwin or Saquon, so he was dead. And then the listener got fourth. He got behind early, played Chris Herndon, Isaiah McKenzie, Peyton Barber, and then had to scramble. The thing on Isaiah McKenzie was like, I expected the Bills to play really well here. I think we talked about in the 3-man, like dead man walking with Adam Gase and Ryan Tannehill going up to one of the hardest places to play in the league in Buffalo. I couldn't project Josh Allen to have more than like 15 or 20 completions. And certainly he could still have a big fantasy day, as we saw. But when Isaiah McKenzie's targets are all like 4 yards down the field or like 2 yards down the field, and you also can't project him for volume because there's just not enough completions to go around, I thought McKenzie was a tough sell. But Herndon and Peyton Barber, I thought, were fine. But regardless, he got behind and then he had to pivot. But luckily for him, born in the USA, he won like 1.2 million or something the previous week. So I think he'll be okay. So the final standings, myself 7 wins, listeners 5 wins, Al 4 wins, Peter 1 win. Spent Sunday night, just in my house, stone naked, letting Jerry lick Gatorade from my body as I poured it all over myself, grapes dangling from my lips onto hers, just the purest of joy. Back to back, it feels so good. The week 17 listener league was only 9K entries. They made it smaller, and it still didn't fill. The excitement is dead. Only 75-30 entries on a rake-free tournament. You guys must be really, really #how rich to pass on that overlay in a rake-free tournament, and people still passed on it. Anyways, that will be the last listener league of the season. I'm not going to do it for the playoffs. Big thanks to everyone who played it. It was really crazy and cool, I thought, to see it fill 10K entries a few weeks back. It's a 10K entries on a $5 buy and 50K prize pool. It's just massive considering it's not in the lobby and can be tricky to find, and it's a 3 max. So crazy. Thanks to everyone who played it this year. It was a lot of fun. Winning the Week 17 Listener League and earning a trip to the Week 1 2019 four-man was JDE Butch. He played naked Josh Allen at 8.5%. Played the same running backs that I played in cash. Dwayne Washington, Saquon Barkley, and CJ Anderson. Played Chris Godwin and Chiefs, which I had also, but he went Tyreek Hill over Juju, and he got up to Alshon over MVS by going Kittle over Kelsey. And there you have it. It's a pretty chalky lineup, just a couple of small pivots. Off the cash team, Alshon was the only one on his team under 17% outside of Josh Allen. I think he won over 100K with this lineup. Sweet team. So congrats to him. We actually got a question from JD Butch. He said, how do you move past a pivot in late slate that costs you a substantial amount of money? So I saw a couple of JD Bush's tweets. Apparently, he had a swap, or he made a swap that ended up costing him winning the Million Maker. And that's obviously tough to swallow, man. Like, I would feel sick and like I got punched in the stomach for days. The good news is he won 100K, which is a lot of money. The only way that you can think about things like that and not drive yourself crazy, I think, JD Butch, is to be like, I made the best decision that I could at the time with the available information, and if you do that every day in life, you're going to end up having a pretty good life and plenty of success. So there's no reason to have regrets. There's no reason to beat yourself up. You had a set of information. You made the decision you thought was best. Looking at it in hindsight, I don't think would be too beneficial. So hope you get over it. I know losing 1.1 or a million or whatever it was is going to sting for a while, but you won the Listener League, man. It doesn't get any bigger than that. All right. In second place was Big Mac 84, Josh Allen with Zay Jones. And, I played Josh Allen with Robert Foster, obviously, and I played Kenyon Drake with it. But in hindsight, Zay Jones at 2.9% probably made sense. Like, his role isn't all that different from Robert Foster's. Yeah, Robert Foster, I think, is a more explosive player, goes downfield more, but gets almost the same amount of opportunity as Zay Jones. He also played Royce Freeman at 7%. DeAndre Hopkins, hashtag defense doesn't matter. Motivated DeAndre Hopkins with his target share should never be 8% probably. I get it. I didn't play DeAndre Hopkins at all either, facing the Jaguars, but, hashtag defense doesn't matter. It is what it is. In third place was TNNT. He played Jameis Winston, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. And yeah, I couldn't believe how low owned these guys were. Jameis Winston, 2%, Mike Evans, 4%. Home, again, home, weather, vertically minded, just set up so perfectly, potential shootout, two bad defenses. TNNT didn't bring it back with anyone on Atlanta. Obviously Julio went off, and that was one of the reasons that I kind of got scared off playing a full game stack in my Winston and Ryan teams. Was I knew that Julio Jones was only going to play like 50 or 60% of the dropbacks. They've been easing off him a bit. So I was worried about that. But if Matt Ryan was going to have a huge game, it was probably going to be something through Julio. So I think I played Julio on one or two of the teams, probably just one. So yeah, crazy to get that game at that low ownership considering everything going on there, given the time of year. All right, now it is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. Going to do a 9-pack of questions today. Question 1 comes from Matt Plain Blanco. He says, does your cash game strategy change much with such a narrowed playoff player pool and overlap? Good question. Obviously, we have 2 4-game slates coming up in the next 2 weeks. Will be a lot of action if you want it. There's always more action on these small slates. I think people feel more comfortable on smaller slates. There's not as much information to go through. They don't feel like they're missing stuff. And also, every game is on TV. They're mostly good teams. It's in the playoffs. So yeah, a lot of action if you want it. Of course, there will be way more overlap on a 4-game slate than there are on bigger slates. We just came off a 15-game slate and there was not that much overlap at all. But for cash, I honestly don't even think about that. I don't think about the overlap. I just have to play what I think is optimal and let my opponents, hopefully hang themselves. I will say this though, two things about short slates. First, correlation is so much more important, particularly for GPPs, but you can make a case for other contests as well, I think. Like, let's say Amari Cooper goes out and breaks the slate, like goes absolutely ham. It would be really hard in that scenario for Dak to also not be the best quarterback on the slate. Whereas on the main slate, there's so many other threats. There's a larger chance that someone else can outscore him. Like, look at week 16, Mike Evans and Chris the God went off and Jameis was great, right? Jameis had like 34 points, but he still wasn't the highest scoring quarterback on the slate. Josh Allen still outscored him. And that's just way more likely to happen on a full slate, which brings me to my second point. Like, a big reason for fading high ownership guys on main slates is there are just so many other options, right? There's so many other players who could realistically outscore the chalk. Now, I haven't looked at this week's playoff slate yet, but typically there are only a few guys who could lead their position in DK points, and they'll all be owned. So certainly more difficult to find low-owned contrarian plays in the playoffs. By the way, speaking of low-owned contrarian plays, I think I answered a question like a week or two ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, from a guy. He was like, why don't, he was like, you guys don't like talking about your cash teams or whatever, your cash lineups on the podcast, which we obviously don't, but he said, why don't you talk more about contrarian plays? And I said, good plays can still be contrarian plays. And I think we talk about good plays on the podcast. When you have Jameis, and I don't even remember if we talked about Jameis and Mike Evans on the 3-man or not, but like when you can get Jameis and Mike Evans at like 2 and 4% owned or whatever, that's the kind of good contrarian play that I want us to talk about on the podcast, not plays where we're just like hoping, there's a 3% chance or a 5% chance that they score 20 points. That's a waste. So hope that makes sense. Question 2 comes from friend of the show, YouTube master, the sports geek, Kevin McClelland. He says, when are you starting a year-round solo pod? Well, first, a scheduling note. There will be 4 more podcasts after today. There will be 3-mans for the wild card and divisional round, and then there will be 2 more solo pods after today. As for after that, still working on plans for the show after the NFL. Definitely going to take a couple weeks off to regroup. I know that I really like doing the one-on-ones I did last year with Cal Spears, with Hoop, with Condia, with Osimo. I'd like to do more of those. Not sure there's enough people who want to do them or people who are interesting enough to do them, but I'd like to. But yeah, as for Sports Geek's question, I like the idea of just taking questions once a week and doing like 20 minutes of that. Definitely will consider it if you guys want to hear that. Just more and more solo listener questions. Let me know. Question 3 comes from Kurt Jensen. He says, any advice on avoiding paralysis by analysis? It seems like a common theme in my losing weeks is doing too much research on suboptimal spots and trying to get too cute with thin plays. I think you have 2 separate questions here, Kurt. First, on paralysis by analysis. Yes, I think that's a problem. The easy answer is you need to streamline your process. Figure out what stats, what data is important to you, and look at that each week, like preferably at the same time each week, really. So you're in a routine. So like on Mondays, I look at player usage from the week before, not just raw snap counts, but I know I want to be looking at how players were used. On Tuesdays, I look at my results and I look at the contest and I make sure that my game selection is on point. On Wednesdays, I start looking at usage and opportunity for sub 5K wide receivers, because I think that's just an important thing to be aware of every week when we're paying up for running backs every week, looking at their yards per route run and ADOT and everything. But whatever you want to do, like whatever you want to do, decide what you think is important to research and stick to that. It shouldn't be like I'm overwhelmed with research. I read too many things this week or whatever, like if you're in the same routine every week and it's what you think is important, I think you should stick to it. The second part from the question about getting too cute, and I know I've said this many times, but like if you're playing the extremely large field GPPs, then you're going to lose most weeks, right? Even if you're good. So it's not because the plays that you made were too cute. It's because playing those things optimally means, if you're going for first place, it means taking on a lot of lower floors. Like the weeks you lose because your cube play didn't perform, you may have actually been playing right. So, now if your cube plays are actually like really bad plays, if they had no shot at opportunity, or if they were, their usage relative to their price or ownership makes them really bad plays, then yeah, you need to reevaluate. But, like when you say that your losing weeks are trying to get too cute within plays, if you're playing large field GPPs, then yeah. Now, if you're getting too cute in cash, then yeah, you need to reevaluate for sure. Question 4 comes from Rob Doster. He says, I have a weight loss bet for the new year. Highest percentage of body weight lost between January 1st and July 1st wins. I faded the gym for the last 3 weeks and ate as much as physically possible to get super fat because that is the easiest weight to shed and ups my percentage. Was this the GTO play? You guys know that I do these kind of lifestyle prop bets a lot, things to motivate me to be healthier or whatever. Like they're really great. But the point of them isn't to beat your friends out of money. It's to actually get healthy, to motivate yourself towards a goal. So Rob, I'm going to have to say that your angle shooting here, and yes, that's certainly an angle, your angle shooting here by bloating yourself prior to the weigh-in is not GTO. Like I just can't condone it. Like I'd never angle Peter or Bales on one of these things, and I know they wouldn't either. Like, I mean, that'd be crazy. I mean, in a micro sense, like I don't want to screw them out of the bet. In a macro sense, like, you just got to have your word in this business that you're going to play things straight. So, good luck in the bet, though, man. I mean, good for you. Sounds like you're going to win it now if you really bloated yourself. Question 6 comes from Neil Borders. He says, do you play other sports in DFS or do you stick to football only? I only seriously play NFL, NBA, and WNBA. That's about it. Did a lot of NBA pods in the past. You can scroll back and find some of those if you're interested. NBA is certainly a game where work and hard work is rewarded, typically more so than NFL because NBA is more projectable. It's not, it's much tighter outcome. There's not 1 yard between 6 points and 0.1 points, on the 1 yard line. Not as many injuries, and there's more late news. It's more like late news based, I would say. In other words, whereas we have all week to talk about it and good plays end up really popular, when X player gets scratched in NBA, there's not as much time for people to think through it. I think there's some edge there, and some people just aren't paying attention anyways, or don't want to change their lineups anyways. I was just looking through my results on Roto Tracker, and my NBA lifetime ROI is actually, in head-to-head, my NBA lifetime ROI is actually about 5 points better than an NFL. So, yeah, I'll start playing NBA a lot real soon here. Obviously, I'll play WNBA in the summer. It's my favorite sport. And I'll also dabble in like some golf or tennis, but not really, not seriously. Question 7 comes from Dean Ports. He says, Adam, when preparing for the week, do you create multiple lineups and decide which one to play in your cash games? Or do you create one lineup and tweak it throughout the week as things change? Thanks. I actually don't make lineups throughout the week. I know my friend JM likes to do that, and I think that can make sense. And I do think having like 5 or 6 lineups in front of you closer to lock and picking the one that you think is best helps. But actually, my preferred way to do it is simply to acquire as much information and data points as possible throughout the week and try to not even build a lineup until Saturday night. Like, of course, I look at the salaries and I have guys in my head I think are musts or guys I think are super strong. But I think I can get biased when I start making teams. Like if I make a team on Thursday, I cling to it or whatever. I just rather give, I'd rather just have all the info before building or as much as possible, come in fresh. So on Saturday night, I'll come in completely fresh. I have what I think is all the information that I need or want or that I will get, make a team then, and then I start thinking about it and maybe playing with some different variations, 2v2s, 3v3s, and stuff like that, usually all the way up until lock. Question 8 comes from, I forgot to write the name here, but question 8 from Anonymous is, given your disdain for GPPs, I'm surprised you entered the super contest. What possessed you to do so and where'd you finish? Yeah, so the Super Contest is simple fun. For those of you guys that don't know what the Super Contest is, it's the biggest sports betting contest in the world, as far as I know. It's run by the Westgate in Las Vegas. Each week you pick 5 NFL games against the spread. Whoever has the best record at the end of the year wins. Simple. They pay 100 places, but just each week, lines come out Wednesday night. They're due by Saturday morning. Everybody picks 5 games each week. Best record wins. But like, this is what I always talk about with large field GPPs. Like I didn't play the Super Contest because I thought I was plus EV or I was making money in it. I did it because it's fun, and that's like what it should be about. That's what large field GPPs should be about too. Like it's the same thing. Like it's not a lot of money to win a lot. Super Contest is $1,500 to enter, and it lasts 17 weeks. I mean, it's less than $100 a week. And on top of that, I did it with 2 of my good friends from college, the true legends, Adam Brown and Eric Snyder, guys I've been betting on sports with for like 20 years. I don't think we have any real edge in the tournament. I mean, maybe we have some edge because I think we're tracking line moves closely. We're aware of where public money is, where sharp money is, and where and how and why lines move. And when the lines come out on Wednesday night and they're a lot different by Saturday, I think that's an edge. And we're also super contrarian, like we're always betting teams that nobody else wants to bet. Like we had Arizona in week 17. We had Cincy when they played the Chargers in week 16, I believe it was, or 15. Games like that. But still, the edge, I mean, the lines are relatively efficient. Like the edge is not too big. And it's also absurdly top heavy, just like GPPs on DraftKings. It was 1.4 million to first. We got 56th place out of 3,117 entries. Like a ridiculous 52, 30, and 3 against the spread mark. And our payout was like 4,500. It's like nothing. So, it's so fun though, and that's really what these like large field things should be about, where you don't put up a lot of money, you have a chance to win a lot. It's fun. We were in the top 20 for a while. Felt like maybe we actually had a chance to win it. Maybe we did. I mean, we probably did. We were so high up for a lot of the year. So God just didn't want it to happen. Did not want it to happen, is what it is. That's going to do it for the third to last solo pod of the NFL season. We'll be back on Thursday night, as usual, with the 3-man game-by-game breakdown of the 4-game wildcard round slate. For producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Happy New Year and good luck, everybody. We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.